I actually know the answer to both of those questions, but I'm just gonna let you guys.
Now recording.
Oh, hey, Craig.
Craigbot!
My best friend.
It's Kreegan's subordinate.
I guess Kreegan didn't make Craigbot.
Kreegan bot. We're gonna have to implement
Kreegan would have made a much cooler looking Craigbot.
a new shadow bot for the server.
Yeah, right.
Yay! Okay, part 2 narcissism. Lippin, will you do the intro since I'm driving?
Yeah, I can do it.
My God, my it's just
Okay.
What? Is everything okay?
Fear is the mind killer. This
Let's
acts.
start this. Whoopsie daisies. We're not ready.
What's wrong with Craigbot? Is
Yeah.
that okay?
I hope he didn't.
He got weirded out by Crispy, and now he's leaving.
gotta get down on Friday.
Why all of us listeners are here? We got no lives.
Uh,
Midday Friday.
The party must continue. Yes, please. I still have 4 hours to drive by myself. You guys, this is gonna really help me.
all right. Well, we're gonna do this. We're gonna do Gnostic.
We're doing
Lore.
it.
Do it.
Do it.
Do it,
Do it.
baby.
Do it. Do it.
Do it.
Ba-da-da-da-da.
Yeah, I'm not prepared, guys. Why am I not prepared? I have this whole thing. Although I did say we shouldn't do plans.
Nah, you're good.
Well, that's my whole thing. Yeah,
I'm all ready.
We're good to go. Librarians, thank you for joining and welcome. This is an Atrium Echo of Gnostic Lore Part 2 by Library of The Untold. And this is a conversation in response to it. This evolving theme of Gnosis and Gnosticism in our library. I am Lippin, joined by Nick Oracle, Spooky, Crispy, and Soul will have to rejoin us as soon as he can. We miss you.
We need to make up a list that we can put up of all the people who are here in spirit.
Yes. All of our entire Discord admin
others that are not.
and other dedicated members. We always hold you in high regard. Yeah, I mean, I guess we're all here gathered to offer our own unique insights. The often misunderstood principles of Gnosticism.
Narcissism.
Yeah. Here at our younger sibling channel to our older sibling library, and echoing all of the lost and forgotten voices of ancient history. So yeah.
And Joey.
And Joey, of course, echoing the man himself.
Come aboard, bring along.
You turn it up.
Tell me if you.
Fear is the mind killer. This axiom is repeated throughout the Dune series. But is it not so that fear indeed stems from the mind? So to eliminate fear, one would have to eliminate the mind. So it is my guess that this phrase has a deeper meaning that regular language does not quite communicate properly. Perhaps it means, as Eckhart Tolle indicates, to quiet the mind temporarily. Simultaneously, the ancient people who we now refer to as the original Buddhists claimed that life is suffering, or more elegantly put, the word dukkha. But how can something as neutral and 0 point center as life itself have any kind of sway in any direction, especially that of negativity? How can the center of all things, life, be colored in any direction that is good or bad? Again, this seems to indicate a deeper meaning that modern language doesn't quite convey. If life is suffering, then this would indicate that the opposite, death, is indeed pure joy. And although we have learned in Book of Wonderful Suffering that death is perfectly safe, I still find it hard to swallow that this is what they indicated. After all, everyone would just fucking kill themselves. And if it were the case that death is without suffering, that would indicate that there is nothing to fear in life in the first place. But here we are, still afraid of fear. So this also seems to be a metaphor for something that words can't quite do. So the axiom, life is suffering, must mean one of two things: that there is another kind of life that is free of suffering, or it was designed that way on purpose, a purpose that we cannot comprehend without getting into the mind of the Zen masters, which is impossible. Meanwhile, far away from the Buddhists were a group of spiritual seekers that we now call the Gnostics. The Gnostics, without having known of the early Buddhists that we know of, set out to put this absolutely abstract idea into comprehensible words using allegorical myth and biblical scriptures as their guide of hypothesis. In their research of both inspired and cynical balance of speculation, they uncovered many inconsistencies that parallel origin myths from all over the world. Some of their findings are disturbing, but none of which are without a light at the end of the tunnel, as we will continue to learn from the Apocrypha of John here today. The Greco-Egyptian culture believed that a being from the waters of the deep called Enki turned against his reptilian fam to teach humans how to escape imprisonment. In 25 AD, the Kunlun people held that Fuxi and Nuwa used clay to create humanoid forms that they brought to life using their divine powers, and that a reptilian being called Zyanglu brought great chaos and turmoil to Earth, including causing a great flood that Nuwa is to correct. The Incan culture maintained that Viracocha created brainless giants from stones, wiped them out in a great flood to make humans, and of course, knowing the Inca, there were several reptiles involved to try to fuck up that whole plan. Within too many cultures to mention here, there is lore of seven-headed serpents just about everywhere. And every one of these myths has a common theme: the creation of human beings by splicing or interbreeding, along with several disagreements about how to go about using or teaching this new and promising race that we now call us. And of course, there is the other reoccurring theme throughout all cultures, indicating that Earth, a farmland used for the agriculture of experimenting and studying human beings, is oftentimes used in the same way that we use farms today, as a source of food. The numerous disappearances of human beings near cave systems haunt our species to this day, but most of the time goes untold due to being disturbing in nature and, of course, absolutely ludicrous in its own notion. So this forces us to look at this lore as a form of parable. But before we sit back and relax knowing that this is all allegory, we should
Do we have Nico?
She might be cutting out.
Can you hear me?
Sort of.
Just okay. So I'm talking about kind of like what Lip is saying, but like Anunnaki or just all that the fucking Asatru Viking gods and the sky people in general. They were all just I want to be like older versions of us from other galaxies that are like fucking with us as an experiment, and we're like, hey, trying to speed us up so they can I don't know our bodies for some inhabiting ritual. I don't know, whatever. But
Right.
it's not for fun and it's not for our playtime and our enjoyment. It's because they have a purpose for us and they need us to hurry up and grow.
Interesting. I mean, I personally, I don't really subscribe to that. I actually look at it as more of again,
I think word
biological.
on is.
I think just like you were saying, everything on Earth is coded, programmed, sliced, perfected, designed. There's got to be a purpose. You know what I mean? Like, for what reason? If us doing it to another planet, I'm like, what would our purpose be? It would be so we could
if
use
you look
it.
at, but like if you give the argument of how are we so perfect, giving that argument to why aliens or Anunnakis designed us or something else, just doesn't add up. There are other explanations, such as you can see in like the kind of biological record that evolution did really kind of know what it was doing. You had a splitting off, you had all these human species, but these human species stopped branching off when there was a good enough species, right? Right?
Well,
When there
potentially. I mean,
was when
go ahead.
when there was a human species that worked, then we stopped branching off, and it's actually very hard for us to actually branch off, for humans to branch off to different species. So,
Well, I think nowadays humans can't branch off because we've cultivated our entire environment, right? We've stagnated evolution by creating an environment suitable to us, right? So the idea that the evolution is driven by environmental changes potentially and the interchanges. I'm not trying to discount that either, but our fundamental principles of DNA. But like I will say that evolution has fucked up like a lot of times. So there's like literally species that just like came into existence that just like evolved weirdly. There was like recently there was a jungle chicken that went extinct, flightless bird that had evolved to just walk on the ground, and it was kind of fat and it was kind of like a chicken, right? But the problem is that its food was still up in the canopy of the trees, and so a lot of them would just die to falling because they would try to climb up these trees and not be able to fly anymore. But the food they eat is up there, so they had to climb the tree, and like so, it was just this weird effect, and then land predators got involved and the whole thing went extinct. But like the idea being that like evolution didn't know like to change its food, right? It just developed something that was successful, and then that later on became a problematic line, right? So I don't know about necessarily perfection, because it's definitely, it seems like a trial and error thing.
yeah, that's also, if you look at if a species starts developing some kind of appendage that you could argue that it's making that appendage for a reason that it kind of sees and
It might have some kind of goal, is what you're saying.
kind of
Yeah, I
there
could say it has an abstract
it,
goal. Like, I'm not saying that it's like, I don't think
it
it's
did
like needlepoint or fine. Like, it's not like someone's writing a book and that things are just flowing out of that one narrative, right? It seems to be a spreading and then a
no
condensation and a spreading and a condensation.
evolution is like, it's not conscious, but it's kind of, you can describe it as that it has will of its own in the way that it kind of reacts consciously with these interference patterns, morphogenetics.
Right.
Like that's why like elephants don't have tusks or are
Well,
starting to
that's
be
because, yeah,
born
we
without
started killing them
tusks.
all off. Yeah. They were more successful without tusks because they weren't being shot.
There's inheritance, unconscious inheritance in,
in biology.
how could you explain that? It has to do with like actual unconscious observing, right? For
Right.
that change to be made.
There has to be interaction to create new things, is what you're saying, like, or to create a difference.
For it to be seen as something that looks like it has a mind of its own, like it looks like evolution has a mind of its own
Right.
because it has, but also it's not conscious. It's not some kind of god.
Well, it doesn't have thought like we do. It doesn't have a brain like we do. So it doesn't have those same logical processes.
Michael Levin. um, I think we just lost Nico. He must have gone through or something. But Michael Levin, cellular biologist, argues that something very much akin to Whiteheadian philosophy, that our bodies are constituted by varying levels of consciousness of to each their own, right? And so you would say maybe like this is probably a simplification or I'm completely murdering it, but like welcome back, Nico. Perfect timing while I'm tripping over my own words. Uh, but I think the various systems in the body contrasted with each other can be said to house a sort of order of consciousness to each their own. I think this is the resolution point between what you guys are trying to talk about here, where it's not there isn't like a thought, there isn't a there's a goal oriented um, a pattern unfolding, but that's not driven by this sort of agential uh, process of thought in the way that the mind works of a human mind. It's more of an unfolding telos, I think, is what Crispy's trying to argue, and that there is a potential for an unfolding of a structure rather than a given structure, and the process to which you described as a development and then a how did you put it? It develops and then it deconstructs and it develops and deconstructs, but it doesn't redevelop into the same thing or something that is a given. It develops into something novel, something emergent, and that's the natural process of what we call evolution, but without having to pin it down to mainstream science terms, just this process of noetic change, contiguous between humans and reality around us.
Initiate data sequencing.
But so Nico argues that the genetic engineering thing is an ideal place to argue from because there's a catalyst apparently described by religious historical literature. But you argue, Crispy, that we don't need that. That teleological complexity of evolution on its own is what allows all of this to emerge, and that our religious literature might just be a phenomenological description, anthropomorphization of those internal structures, forces.
There's a development in evolution, then that development becomes easier to start making, start integrating into the structure of other organisms, because now that there is a solid blueprint that's already existing, so it becomes easier to use that. It takes less energy. Nature is very focused on energy efficiency. That's why we don't have all these different appendages that make things easier. We just have something that works, because else it would take too much energy. Biological organisms also use a lot of spirals. These spirals, they develop with not too much energy, so there's tension in the spiral. If you have a very thin paper, you see that this thin paper starts spiraling because there's inherent tension in the material that is the paper. So that happens with nature too. All our body parts are made of these spirals that flow inwards.
Yeah.
It's being transferred through the cells. There's a certain balance that needs to be put in that energy transfer.
Mm.
Um, and that's how you get kind of the Fibonacci number. That's a
Sure.
that's basically it's the sweet spot,
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah,
of
this is a very sensible
not not too little.
perspective on the deeper metaphysics as to the nature of the human condition. We all could we could unload hours of personal insights on that. There's so much that
Yeah, genetics is a big one.
especially when it comes to the genesis of the human race. I mean, and the telos of it. I mean, that's which I guess is essentially what the whole channel is trying to figure out, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It also relates the spirals relate to the kind of morphological memory, create stable blueprints, basically. Yeah,
Hmm.
Right.
simple.
Yeah, we'll proceed.
Sure.
Remember what we have learned on this channel several times. Just like evolution and creation turning out to be two words used for the same thing, and many other opposites that, upon further research, turned out to be simultaneously so. Just like the yin and yang, absolutely nothing in existence is self-sufficient, and in one form or another, physical or ethereal, everything must eat to sustain itself. Being that we are gifted and cursed with self-awareness, we are forced to ask ourselves one of the most frightening questions that can possibly penetrate the human psyche. This absolutely horrific question being asked is simple. Are we the top of the food chain? So the pleroma, being the unified field to modern science, was the medium in which repentance could be heard. She was not punished but forgiven and put on a pedestal so that she might fix this up. But her son, being strong and ignorant, if physical form that is already off and running. And well, here we are. Despite being born into that huge syntax error that is her son, the Demiurgos, it seems as if it is now up to us to realize the imperfections of that syntax error in which we were born into and embrace the great spirit that penetrates all things, including this fucked up part of the hood, you know, that bad neighborhood up there in heaven. I mean, there is a black dot in the white part of the yin yang after all. I think that hypothesis can be slightly backed up by this next passage that I'll summarize here. A voice came forth from the exalted eon heaven. The man exists and the son of man. The chief archon, Yaldabaoth, heard it and thought the voice had come from his mother, the image of the invisible one who is the father of all, through whom everything came into being, the first man. For he revealed his likeness in a human form, an error of form, but still with the divine spark. As I read this next part, I want you to think of the double slit experiment and measurement problem in which we learned in our first video on this channel that actual defined atomic particles do not exist until there is a conscious agent to be aware of it. Until there is a sentience there to measure it, it remains in a superposition or a wave that is like fluid or water. And the whole eon of the chief archon trembled. The foundations of the abyss shook. The waters which are above matter, the underside was illuminated by the appearance of his image which had been revealed. When all the authorities and the chief archon looked, they saw the whole region of the underside which was illuminated. And through the light they saw the form of the image in the water. This next passage goes into the creation of Adam, and hence at the birth of jealousy through lust, which is, of course, a problem that has...
Can I just real quick, guys, emphasize here he's correlating the double slit experiment and how you guys actually you were correlating it to he's correlating this to the apocryphal version of Genesis. And I just want to back up real quick and repeat what he said, if you guys don't mind. The part that really gets down to the observation having an effect.
Field. When all the authorities and the chief archon looked, they saw the whole region of the underside, which was illuminated. And through the light, they saw the form of the image in the water. This
illuminated form in the water, once observed upon by all the archons, including the chief archon, which would be, the demiurgos, right? That's an amazing implication considering the role of light in the double slit experiment, quantum mechanics, and such.
That also sounds like what I said about morphogenesis.
Yeah,
natural.
Yeah, interference patterns and such. Yeah,
that's basically how that goes. Morphogenesis.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Next passage goes into the creation of Adam, and hence at the birth of jealousy through lust, which is, of course, a problem that has plagued humanity apparently forever. And the powers began. Goodness created the bone soul. Foreknowledge created a sinew soul. Foreknowledge and sinew. Sine wave. Divinity created a flesh soul. The lordship created a marrow soul. Kingdom created a blood soul. And there is that, kingdom again that we have associated with DNA. And the sixth, envy, created a skin soul. Worth noting here is that the hair soul was created by the concept of understanding, the personification, that is, of understanding. In Native American cultures, as well as many others, it is said that long hair seems to work as an antenna that connects the human blood or DNA to the divine, thus propagating a higher understanding. So yeah, I quit shaving my head. LOL. LOL was in the notes. It's a habit, whatever. LOL. But this freaky ass unit of text goes on to detail the creation of the rest of the anatomy, including the right buttock and the left penis, called Biduk and Arabi. Ivan of Peaceful Savage Show, let me know if I'm saying that right. Arabeei. First of all, I'm not going to pretend that the name of the personification that created the right buttock has got the word Duke in it. Isn't funny? I'm not going to pretend that's not funny. As far as the left penis thing goes, y'all can let me know what that means, because I don't quite get it myself. And that's probably just because my brain goes into like a Uranus mode, that anything we learn about Uranus is just going to be funny. So, oops. Uranus happens to be the gaseous planet, by the way. The four chief demons who belong to pleasure, desire, grief, and fear. From the four demons, passions came forth. From grief came envy, jealousy, distress, trouble, pain, callousness, anxiety, mourning. From pleasure, much wickedness arises, and empty pride. From desire comes anger, wrath, and bitterness. And from fear comes dread, fawning, agony, and shame. All of these are like useful things as well as evil things. I suppose useful in the sense of survival here on Earth. But now, I mean, this has got Buddhism written all over it, especially when you consider that called the four chief demons and Buddhist mandalas that show the cycle of life and death called samsara are being held by some kind of demonic forces or beings, and those are always laid out in sets of four as opposed to sixes and threes, which is typical in mandalas. This continues on with our prior hypotheses about squaring the circle. The Trinity, or sets of three, represent divinity, just as circles did to the ancient primal man. But dualism, as laid out in suchness of the four directions, like the square, seem to illustrate the lower gross realms of matter. A note to self, try not to mention the black cube in this passage. The number of the angels together are 365. They all worked on it until the natural material body was completed by them. There are other ones in charge over the remaining passions. If you wish to know them, it is written in the book of Zoroaster. That's not in my notes, that's what the Apocrypha says. All the angels and demons worked until they had constructed the natural body, and their product was completely inactive and motionless for a long time. Motionless for a long time. Mud sat up, like the old parable. It is interesting here that we have angels and demons working together to create the physical human body. It's weird, but somehow fitting. So check this out and tell me if it sounds like the quantum hypothesis that matter arises from consciousness and not the other way around. And adding to that, it also seems to illustrate beautifully the Hindu concept of prana, or pneuma, so to speak, that is the spirit breathed into man's flesh of the lesser realm. The holy decree, the 5 lights, advised him that they should bring forth the power of the mother. They said to Yaldabaoth, blow into his face something of your spirit and his body will arise. The power of the mother went out of Yaldabaoth into the natural body, which they had fashioned after the image of the one who exists from the beginning. Notice the number 5 there. In that moment, the rest of the powers became jealous because he had come into being through all of them, and they had given their powers to the man, and his intelligence was greater than those of who had made him, greater than that of the chief archon. When they recognized that he was luminous, free from wickedness, they threw him into the lowest regions of matter. Jealous ass motherfuckers. Man came forth because of the shadow of the light which is in him. His thinking was superior to all those who had made him. When they looked up, they saw that his thinking was superior. When they looked up, they saw that his thinking was superior. Ooh. Pissed. They took fire and earth and water and mixed them together with the 4 fiery winds. They wrought them together and caused a great disturbance. They brought Adam into the shadow of death in order that they might form him again and again from the earth and water and fire and the spirit which originates in matter, the ignorance of darkness and desire and their counterfeit spirit. This is the tomb of the newly formed body with which the robbers had clothed the man. The bond of forgetfulness, and he became a mortal man. This is the first separation, but the epinoia of the light which was in him, she is the one who was to awaken his thinking. Possibly right brain hemisphere? This is the tomb of the newly formed body. It's a nice pun. This passage seems to finally bring up the idea of the archons that not being physical beings would not require physical food like humans. Human beings eat physical food, thus humans eat suffering. I mean, whether it be a plant or an animal, death has to occur for us to consume. An ethereal being wouldn't be any different. They need to eat. Like the yin and yang, something has to consume something else for either to exist. The archons must eat something, but being ethereal beings, they of course could not consume physical matter. They would have to consume some other kind of death. If you take time out of the equation, which of course is just part of our world and not theirs, then they could easily sustain themselves on perpetuated suffering, the toils of men, and now soon here, momentarily, of both men and women. It also, once again, hints at the idea of the secret message long hidden within our DNA codices. The beneficent and merciful one had mercy on the power of the mother which had been brought forth out of the chief archon, for the archons might gain power over the natural and perceptible body. He sent through his beneficent spirit and his great mercy a helper to Adam, luminous epinoia, which comes out of him who is called life. She assists the whole creature by toiling with him and by restoring him to his fullness, by teaching him about the descent of his seed, by teaching him about the way of his ascent, which is the way he came down. The luminous epinoia was hidden in Adam in order that the archons might not know her. But the epinoia might be a correction of the deficiency of the mother. This next portion is where we start to get into the imprisonment of man through chains made from man's own desires. They would let humans build their own prison bars of desire and fear. Humans simply wouldn't know that they were not free. The archons took him and placed him in paradise. They said to him, "Eat that is at leisure." For their luxury is bitter and their beauty is depraved. Their luxury is deception, and their trees are godlessness, and their fruit is deadly poison. Monsanto. And their promise is death, and the tree of their life had been placed in the midst of paradise. John asked the being that he's having this conversation with about the nature of this so-called forgetfulness that will befall man, and the being replied, "It was in his perception. For also he said through the prophet, I will make their hearts heavy, that they may not pay attention and may not see." Then the epinoia of the light hid herself in Adam. The chief archon wanted to bring her out of his rib. But the epinoia of the light cannot be grasped. Although darkness pursued her, it did not catch her. He brought a part of his power out of him, and he made another creature in the form of a woman, according to the likeness of the epinoia which had appeared to him. He brought the part which he had taken from the power of the man into the female creature, and not, as Moses said, his rib bone. We said in the last video, coming from the heart chakra and not literally the rib. The rib that protects the heart portion, of course. Adam saw the woman beside him, and in that moment, the luminous epinoia appeared, and she lifted the veil which lay over his mind, and he became sober from drunkenness and darkness. Those Vatican guys definitely didn't like reading that, I'm sure. Our sister Sophia is she who came down in innocence in order to rectify her deficiency. Therefore, she was called Life, which is the mother of the living. Is Sophia of the Gnostics just Gaia?
So, a lot to unpack. I have personally, what I have so far is, at the beginning, he kind of sets up how there's this possibility of, genetic engineering from an external entity. But then all throughout, up until this point, he's talking about the non-physical nature of the archons and how these forces sort of constitute ascent of matter, grossness from nothing, from darkness, or maybe the descent of light into flesh, into matter. And so which is it, right? And oftentimes the case that he ends up coming to in the end of the videos is that it's both somehow. He's eventually getting to that point here, but it can be very confusing. Holy decree of four fates. What is that? And the bond of forgetfulness, which was, when John asked the entity what the nature of that is, this reveal that's pulled down from the placing of this what's it called, this luminous epinoia, which that I'm like, what is that? What is this luminous epinoia? And was it he essentially describing Yaldabaoth casting Lucifer out of wherever it is that the archons are in congregation, quote unquote heaven. And that they create and constitute the human condition and take from it, like it's the food source. It's describing that non-physical entities need a non-physical type of energy. Where are you guys at with all that? Because I know
Yeah, it really does describe how um, reality itself, why we're existing, is because it's always incomplete in a way. Like it's, but it's not imperfect, right? It's like an incomplete perfection. So everything is perfect clay, it's perfect material, but it's an incomplete picture.
Well, yeah, I mean that's why it's described
So
as like a
that's
syntax
like
error, right? And
we're not, yeah,
and
we're
this,
not self-sufficient.
yeah. Well, the Gnostics can be, they're contrasted between Sethian and Valentinian, and you could just look at it as one group looked at it negatively and one group looked at it positively. That you could say that the demiurge, or that the physical existence as constituted by the demiurge is this evil thing, or you could look at it as this is what gives you life. It's like you exist because of it. Like, thank you. And you can look at this syntax error as an error, or you could look at it as, like you're describing, as like a perfection unto itself because of the so-called error inherent to the system. But Nico, if you're there, if you have connection, you've been sparse on your words for the content as of yet today. Are you still with us, Nico? I hope she's okay.
Yeah. It's also, I also have the the guy in the Matrix, the that big robot at the in the third movie, the controller of the Matrix, had a baby face. It's kind of
The architect.
demiurge kind of image, because it's like a infantile kind of ignorance. Like just it just can't see uh, beyond a certain point.
Yeah, babies don't know that
Well,
they're born. Babies have no idea that they were brought into existence. They're just here now, right?
Right.
Yeah.
yeah, but
Infantile ignorance is
they
exactly
don't
the word.
like know they don't know things that might be important. Right?
Yeah.
So it's like and that's why Gnostics can make it seem bad, because like, well, what if we're ignoring something we should be doing, right? Well, what if we don't know about something that we should be doing, and that it's like each moment we don't know, we're destroying what we could have made if we did know, right? That's the type of evil they're describing.
Yeah, I mean, you guys know the drum that I typically bang here. That there's a synthesis point between the two schools of thought, in that it's not all positive, it's all not all negative either. Just there's a utility in see this material realm that is of utter consequence to the decisions that we make in terms of pleasure or pain, and acknowledging the nature of that, right? It doesn't matter which school of thought you would tend to, because positive or negative outlooks, it doesn't need to be a lifelong paradigm in terms of the way you define this reality. It can be an ontological process. All right, so depending on you, not depending on it, you know, it can be a prison, or it can be a school, right? It can be walls of security and protection, or it can be walls of self imprisonment, depending on us, right? So,
Right. Yeah. Could be
Yeah.
perceived either way.
yeah. Can you walk through hell as if it were a heaven? Is the way I like to ask it. And if you can, then you transcended the limitations that it's attempted to bestow upon you. Because if the point is to give in to your suffering, and then you give in, but it doesn't destroy you, but well, it does, but you're recreated, so to speak. You're reborn in your annihilation, right? And if you can do
Right.
that, right, that's you have the gates of Eden are opened up to you. The cherubim's flames have they've completely burnt away, anything that didn't pass, that wouldn't pass, and the rest of you can go along into Paratellona Mixonia, as it were.
Does it smell like onion for you?
No.
I mean,
It does
sometimes
smell like onion.
if I drive a few minutes around the
I
corner,
mean, if I have onions, then yeah.
around the Linway, there's this Italian sub shop that I think they have their flat top grill like right underneath their ventilation system that pours all of the aromatics right out into the open road, and it spills down the freeway. And if you're driving down by with your windows unraveled, if your windows are down, you can smell onions as if it were like being cooked in your car or like by your engine.
Right. I cook a lot of onions, so I don't know.
Since we're on the topic of onions, garlic is probably one of my more preferred aromatics. To be honest.
Fair enough. My favorite's rosemary, to be honest. But
Rosemary is great. I incorporate rosemary a lot.
Mm-hmm. Same. Basil as well.
Yeah.
If you ever make shawarma, like begin with garlic and onions, or like let it soak into some water. Like put water in the pan. Let all that onion and garlic soak in there, and you put the shawarma on. Oh man, it's so much better than no garlic and no onion.
Yeah, man. Someone's been
Are you
eating
back?
out with the Avengers or something. I've never had shawarma.
Nick Oracle, are you back?
Yeah, do we have you, Nico?
Can you hear me?
Eating out
Okay,
with the Avengers.
now.
What are you saying?
Yeah, the Avengers,
Can you guys
man.
hear me?
You never saw the post-credit scene to Avengers, man?
Yes.
Oh, man. Yeah, we got you now, Nico. I hope you haven't been attempting to get through a connection barrier for the past
I've been
half
gone
hour.
for like 20 minutes. Like I missed everything. I missed everything until just now.
I'm sure you have a lot to say, though. I'm sure you have a lot to say, though, about that. What do you have to say about like the bond of forgetfulness, Yaldabaoth casting out Lucifer, this holy decree of for something? I think he said fate. Luminous epinoia. What is all this stuff?
What did I miss? Something about the casting out of Lucifer?
In the past, like 10 minutes of passage. Yeah.
He's just asking about your thoughts on the.
How would
We haven't started it yet.
Yeah. How would you contextualize like
The video. What's the question? How would I conceptualize the casting out of Lucifer?
how would you contextualize just any of what was last read off in the content there about I think basically until he got to the part about Sophia came down in her innocence to rectify her deficiency and all that. Before that, his entire passage reading was like a description, the apocryphal description of Genesis and how the archons and the chief archon essentially constitute the development of the human condition internally, and this luminous epinoia he describes like she descended into the rib of Adam, this luminous epinoia, which is this feminine force of the pleroma, maybe an aeonic kind of force. Extrapolated from that is this sense of Eve, of the female counterpart being born. So I mean, I guess you can extrapolate that from the text. That is what's being extracted from Adam's rib after the descent of the luminous epinoia. So what's going on here? Do I have this right, or am I completely murdering?
Okay, so I missed all of that portion of the video that you watched because I have no signal because I'm in fucking Pacific.
Yeah.
But I can give you my sense of everything that you just explained. So, gnostically speaking, the origins of creation is kind of like there is this sleeping consciousness, right?
Yep.
The Brahman. And it is
That's my one.
vastly bigger than anything that we could possibly imagine, right? So the Brahman is asleep, right? The Brahman wakes up spontaneously, randomly, for whatever reason, alarm clock went off, I don't know, whatever happened, the consciousness wakes up. And it goes through these cycles of sleep and wake, right? Just like we do. But
So
they're much
anyway,
longer cycles for the consciousness.
yeah.
So the consciousness wakes up. And in that moment, it realizes that it was once asleep and is now awake. It has awareness of duality.
Okay.
In the moment that God wakes up and realizes he was dreaming, he realizes and acknowledges duality, right? Now there's an awake and a sleep, or there's a where I used to be and a where I am now. And in that moment, like the whole universe and all of space and time and creation is born because of all the possibilities that God was thinking or Brahma was thinking that could have happened between then and now, right? Just the waking up. And it was like that spontaneous eruption, big bang moment that created all things, right? That we know. And now, because of that, everything that we created is like a probability, the Godhead, that could possibly be. But
Yeah.
in God's awareness of a duality, a possibility now, there is the dual nature of everything, and it just echoes and fractalizes out, right? So the Gnostic version of that, it tells a story, but in like fairy tale with like names and people and allegory.
Right.
But Adam and Eve, just if you trace them all the way back to the beginning, they're the original masculine, feminine, right? So
Yep.
masculine being light, and then feminine being dark. So light always comes first, and then darkness happens after that. Because the first thing that happened was God woke up, and then there was that moment of realization that, oh shit, there is some shit that I didn't know or that I don't currently know, right? So that's the darkness, the ignorance. So you wake up and you're dumbfounded for a minute, and you're looking around like, what's going on? Where am I at? What just happened? That's the ignorance and the darkness that was created simultaneously with the waking up process. So masculine and feminine kind of happened at the same time, but in sequence, it is, you know, light and then dark. And then it goes and it fractalizes, right? So the sun and the moon, the man and the woman. And then you take the Gnostic lore about Lilith being born at the same time as Adam, of the same equality as Adam, right? And then that situation didn't work out because Adam's man was out of balance with masculine and feminine energies, right? So the feminine energy is curious and wanders off, and the masculine energy is alone, and that's entropy. You're welcome for that. And then in his loneliness, the masculine, the light, the knowledge, the understanding creates a new companion, false light, false equal opposite, right? Like an illusionary partner to replace the one that they lost. So as light and darkness are always changing each other, light has the benefit of distraction.
This is this luminous epinoia, right? I'm guessing.
Yes, that's the illusion, the Mayan, right?
Okay.
So while Adam is forever looking for Lilith, he's happily distracted by everything else.
Okay.
And then the Lucifer situation is a different story.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll save that for when the content comes upon it. Well, thanks for the breakdown, and that was actually quite amazingly aligned, despite your handicap from not having seen the passages that we just read off. Well aligned with,
Cool.
with the question regarding it. Yeah. Continue.
Yeah.
Especially now that you're back. Yeah, we'll get you back in the game.
By the foreknowledge of the sovereignty of heaven, through her they have tasted the perfect knowledge. This is one of those manuscripts that if they took it out of the Bible before it was found in the Nag Hammadi, it's no wonder, considering it displays women as divine light that awakens the primal form of Adamu from his slumber. And we saw how they felt about Mary Magdalene earlier. Sexism is now as much or more part of the Catholic system than these ancient teachings are. The mother also sent down her spirit in the likeness and a copy of those who are in the Pleroma. She will prepare a dwelling place for the aeons which will come down. He made them drink water of forgetfulness from the chief archon, in order that they might not know where they came from. The seed remained for a while, assisting him, in order when the spirit comes forth from the holy aeons, he may rise up and heal him from the deficiency. The whole Pleroma may again become holy and faultless. A species with amnesia that can remember, a sleepwalker that can become lucid of his dreams, thus being able to choose for himself when to fully awaken. I mean, that is some Zen shit, and apparently effortlessly done. But how? Well, let's peep up this beefy spot on transcendence. John asked, "Will all the souls then be brought safely into the pure light?" He answered, "Great things have arisen in your mind, for it is difficult to explain them to others except to those who are from the immovable race." Immovable race. Those on whom the spirit of life will descend, and with whom he will be with the power, they will be saved, and be worthy of the greatness, and be purified in that place. They have no other care than the incorruption alone. They direct their attention from here on without anger or envy or jealousy or desire and greed of anything. They are not affected by anything except the state of being in the flesh alone, which they bear while looking expectantly for the time when they will be met by the receivers. Such then are worthy of the imperishable. And to have no care is synonymous with not feeling fear. So the way of the Tao it is then. John then asked about our fellow humans that might not be able to make the cut, so to speak. This passage does also gently hint at reincarnation as a growth process, as opposed to any kind of hell, which again is not mentioned anywhere within the canon. And the being replied, "The despicable spirit has gained strength. He burdens the soul and draws it to the works of evil, and he casts it down into forgetfulness. And after it comes out of the body, it is handed over to the authorities who came into being through the Archon." Most like the Tibetan book or the Egyptian Book of the Dead. "And they bind it with chains and cast it into prison and consort with it until it is liberated from the forgetfulness and acquires knowledge." So you go forward and up within this archetype of reincarnation. But how ironic would it be if that particular reality was the one that we are all in instead of the prior one that we've been speaking of? Like that kid Robbie in your 6th grade class that had a theory that Earth was actually hell. So I think that these 3 definitions of gnosis are indeed not only parallel, but synonymous with each other at their origin. Direct experience as opposed to being told, the lost books of the Bible, the idea of etheric beings or forces that feed on the suffering of humanity. The second and third definition are, of course, easy to associate, considering that this Apocrypha of John seems to indicate that original Gnostic philosophy of the Demiurgos. And where I think the first definition comes into play is that this realization, this philosophy, this Gnostic philosophy, is something that can't necessarily be grasped by being told or taught this. And that brings into play the visions that people would have when they encountered the angels who exclaimed, "Be not afraid." They couldn't learn these things by reading them in a text or being preached to. They had to understand these things by getting visions shoved into their in third eye and literally going through the madness of this experience in order to understand it, which can be very frightening. Just like firsthand accounts, thus gnosis is more frightening than a classroom is. You gotta go in. You gotta do it. You gotta face the dragon. Which brings us back to the very beginning of this video concerning fear in the nervous system. It seems as if the one surefire way to be able to experience these higher sentient realities is to eradicate fear from your human nervous system. The body feels, it has desires, it needs food, and you are forced to constantly be taking something in or needing something in order to survive. If air ceases, not only do you cease yourself, but you go into great pain. If you don't eat, if you don't drink, many of these things are very painful. Not to mention the fact that lust and greed that causes desire are things that we become angry or jealous about when we don't have them, despite not needing them in the first place. So trying in an attempt to move away from that so-called pain, we have fear. We are afraid of going through that pain. Unlike Mary Magdalene and Christ, who were not afraid of being crucified. Not that Mary was, but you get it. So simply by completely understanding the gnosis, the Gnostic idea that the human physical body is not real, they were able to bypass pain altogether. And if you don't have pain, if you don't feel suffering, then there's no reason to be afraid. Fear is gone. You can physically feel the sensations, but your mind is now separated from that stimulation of the nervous system. I'm reminded when Kennedy said that the only thing to fear is fear itself. That's absolutely perfect for what we're talking about here. If you can eradicate fear from your nervous system, you transcend, because you have emptied your cup of desires and selfish wills. And now that your cup is empty, there's nothing left to fill it but love. Love, of course, being that primordial first essence, that divine knowledge. Love seems to be not only the absence of fear, but love seems to be the actual first thing, so to speak. And now I know that's a weird sentence, but it almost seems as if suchness of reality, that in which reality can exist, seems to derive directly from love. Love is the reason that things are sustained. Love is the reason that things are kept. So knowing that fear is necessary for survival on Earth to keep the body alive, is it possible to love your own fear? There are those who might say, according to the law, the Hermetic principles of polarity, that love is the opposite of fear. But if you are to fold that notion over, therefore uniting those opposites, and fall in love with your fear because of its worth and what it does for the human body, you are now a completely indestructible being. Someone could rip your arm off and throw it into a river, and you are still you. If you were to get your head chopped off, clean cut, and just be alive for 13 seconds as just a head, you would literally, in this crazy ass sense, be in love with that new sensation of not having a body. Whenever the insurance company changes a law that completely fucks you over and your finances, you can be in love with the fact that turmoil and opposition exists in the world in the first place, to better create that yin and yang that we can't live without, that we can't exist without. So if we can't get rid of
a very, very powerful message there, guys. What do you think? This separation from pain by accepting, loving fear, rather, because it's this Buddhistic thing.
Yeah,
It
nothing
reminds me
is
of
fixed.
when the monk lit himself up on fire
Yeah,
in
self-immolation.
front of a tanker, I think. Yeah, and he
That happens a lot. That's happened to much more than that, just that one time.
does it really?
Self-immolation is a protest. Yeah. Well,
It-
it doesn't necessarily happen all the time, but
I
like
know that
it's
there's a
happened definitely more
spiritual
times
practice
than
like it.
it's part of it's a self-sacrifice in protest essentially.
Right.
So it's like you're
Yeah,
protesting by taking your own life.
But I mean, to just let it go on and then die and not like run for the nearest like give me some
Oh
water.
yeah, that takes
You're
immense
he-
mental
this man
mental strength.
or these men achieve what he's talking about here.
Right.
They've
Yeah.
ascended.
Oh,
They've
absolutely.
transcended pain by marrying love with fear. And I do want to point out the Hindu implications here that that Kali is Shiva's wife, you know, and this is kind of like this union between fear and love kind of constitutes it. It's depicted as constituting everything. Uh, where am I at?
So you're only afraid of which you are unprepared for, unaware of, right? So darkness, feminine, fear, that's all the feminine side, right? And the masculine side is knowledge, awareness, knowing, action, movement, and it's just the cycle, like this is they're alike in nature. They're alike in nature but opposite in degree, right? So it's
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean? It's the same thing, but it's different ends of it. And the goal is to find the middle path. And that's how you balance it. You know what I mean? And then neutral zone is in the middle. In the middle, when you're neutral, you're in alignment with the spirit.
Yeah, nothing is made and nothing is fixed by throwing out things, hating things or fearing things. If you
Exactly.
integrate these things, if you actually glue your shit back together, then that's a lot more powerful than constant opposition.
Yeah. You
Well,
guys are
and that's how
speaking
you
to
balance.
Opposition
yes.
opposition is also a form of uh, uh, kind of love, right? Because you
Yeah.
see, by opposition, things can be integrated. So you see, like a system of control would, you know, by agreeing to each other that the other has control and the other is subordinate. You kind of create this game, right, of opposition.
Well,
So
by
things,
opposition, things define each other, don't they? And in that,
yeah,
you sort of it gives way to an emerging dialectic. Right?
Inertia
yeah, and
gives way to
also
attributes.
I also noticed, like a Pluto symbol in one of the frames of the videos. It's also, that kind of sprang the thought of making me say that, that Pluto, we're in a plutocracy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
His the way he frames together images, there's a very powerful implication with some of the images he had overlay each other in the timeline. He had
Like, the amount of
these two
time he
skulls.
spends digging through pictures.
Oh,
Oh, I
I
can
bet to
imagine.
make that happen. I mean, he had these two human skulls cut out from the center, facing from a side angle, and had them in mirror opposition to each other, such that it creates this geometric structure that we're all familiar with, that we can liken to
Yeah,
the
he does that. He's
internal
got that creative
sexual.
eye.
Yeah, it was you can liken it to the internal sexual organs of the female sexual organs. You can liken it to the shape of a ram's head, etc. Um, but then he had, Christ overlay that as the image disappeared before that, and there's a strong implication there if you understand what he is getting at with that visual overlay. And like you said, like we often say, the rapidity of the content is such that you got to be really paying close attention. He's doing that thing that artists have done, taking the torch down since freaking Michelangelo and Da Vinci in terms of that painting up on that chapel, man. I mean, what it's implying
And
and
this
the way it's superimposed. I mean, he does the same thing in his videos. I'm sorry.
Said he's obsessed with symmetry. That's what gets him. He's like,
Yeah.
everything has to be symmetrical or exactly. And I want to be like, it's because he works with like windows, right? Like he makes windows for giant buildings, so he's always measuring.
Oh, right.
You know what I mean? Angle. Like he's all about the big frame and the angle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He'll be like, what do you think about this picture? About 30 degrees left of this. And I'm like, what does that mean? What's that mean? What just show me.
Right. I mean, there's a reason why masonry would give way to a deeper understanding metaphysically about our reality.
Right, because it's geometry.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, if you look, make that symmetrical to metaphysics, then symmetry plays a role in the structure of everything.
Yeah.
Also, the Pluto symbol is also like it's like an opposite cross, and it has a bull holding the self. So it's like that's kind of like opposition, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Symmetry.
Mirror principle, and infinite regress, a very common visual motif in the videos, appropriately, right?
Yeah.
But I like how he was like, love and fear integrated in that you have to love your fear type deal.
Yes.
And that's kind of like back to like shadow work where you like find your shadow selves and then like love them, and that's what integrates them into the authentic self, and now you're individuating, right?
To be able to marry them together, and that's that willingness to stare into the abyss, into the unknown. But
I mean, alchemical marriage.
But all of this is, you do have those this motif, which has been cinematically portrayed often, where you reach the top of the lighthouse, you stare into its light, and it burns your eyes out, and then you have a crow picking at your liver, just like Prometheus. You stared into the abyss, but you weren't really ready for it. Like the willingness was there, but you actually weren't worthy of laying your eyes upon it quite yet. And so that's why there is a work to be done, right? There's this process that's letting the cherubim burn and cut away with their flaming swords whatever is impure in you, such that your internal structure might have the necessary completion, right? In order to make it through and get to the other side, to make it back to Eden.
And that's back to what Crispy was saying, is that you can't balance something by taking it away. You have to add the opposite polarity.
Yes. Yeah, because it's the incorrect. It's not a sacrifice. Yeah, it's the incorrect sacrifice. It's an inversion of what the necessary sacrifice is supposed to be, which is, I think, what Cain and Abel's story kind of speaks to.
Which is the perversion of the function of the sacrifice to begin with.
Yeah. Well, that came around full circle quite appropriately. Yeah. Oh no, Crispy has some last words.
It's like building an IKEA table by throwing out all the parts, throwing them in the bin. You don't want to make you waste time. You don't want to waste
me
time
at building an IKEA table.
Yeah. This is the Antichrist, right? If the Christ is, I like that point. That's a very humorous way of really getting down to the crux of it, right? Because like if the Christ is that which puts correct order to things such that they such that they work proper, right? Then the opposite of that would be indeed like how you just described. You're not doing what needs to be done, you know, and therefore the proper instruction isn't being laid. You know, the improper instruction is now being laid for generations past to take upon, and that's karma. That's the that's the karmic principle coming into action in our oscillation over the aeons of living in
Dude.
ignorance or in light.
The,
Yeah.
yeah. The Pluto symbol looks like a crux. The fuck? That's crazy.
Shall proceed.
Yes.
Fear,
Yeah, the last couple minutes.
then we should fall in love with it.
Sort of get a
Punctuates exactly everything that I had just said in response to him, and the time is like perfect.
sort of get a little PG-13, but masturbation is also more bullshit.
Masturbation is like
Use
more
us?
work.
What? Also, if
I'm gonna be like,
it's
only
like
if you,
it's a
only if you
chakra
put it
inversion.
into you. Like,
Whole new meaning of fuck yourself.
I mean,
like it depends
you
on what
could.
you swallow. That's all I'm saying. I mean,
You
that's like
could.
better than stem cells as far as keeping you young. So I recommend swallowing. Everybody, I recommend. But
I recommend.
like, it's great for you. It's better than stem cells. Just saying.
A lot of protein too. So,
Not just protein. It's life. There's life in that. There's so much life in that. It can populate an entire fucking planet.
seems like I've committed a lot of genocide. Jesus.
It seems like I've committed a lot of genocide.
Yeah, every time.
Yeah, that would make three of us, I would suppose. Speak for you.
Or
Not to speak for you.
destroyer of nations
we
over
we
here.
don't know what's going on around Nico's don't even think about it. Don't even think about what I said.
Just saying. The power of the armor is strong with this one. So yeah, great video, guys.
Yeah.
What if
Sorry I missed half of it.
someone's remote viewing under your skirt?
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
I got
Oh,
no shame. I got no shame.
oh, that's good.
That's
Like it's just a body. You just see.
Yeah. No, that's kind of how it should be, really. Like, it's like people have become very detached to what humans are supposed to kind of be like. So things
I
are
just
things
want
are
everybody to
weird.
be comfortable. Like as long as it's not uncomfortable, I'm okay. As soon as it starts
Right.
getting really uncomfortable, I'll get the fuck out. Like I do not want to be in this body.
Right. Well, like, and that's fair enough. It's more or less like, I don't think people shouldn't avoid change or whatever if they want to change their bodies or whatever. Be healthy or not. I don't really care, but um, it's more or less like people have become like we're like one of the biggest things that I noticed recently. Like I was like, we're the only species who thinks our own species smells bad.
Probably
Like
not.
that seems like an evolutionary problem. Like
or advantage, right? It gives us the ability to discriminate partners based on their propensity for congeniality. That speaks to their ability to self.
no, I'm talking about like perfumes and stuff. I'm not talking about like pheromones. I'm talking about people literally think people smell bad. And like that
Yeah, yeah.
so
No,
people cover up their smell
yeah,
to compensate for that. And it's like that's an insane thing. Like that seems so
Okay,
bad.
yeah.
look,
I don't
like
wear.
I've never had that. I've never
I can.
smelled.
I,
I've never. I don't think a regular person smells bad, bro. So that's like
What is a
that's
regular
just
person?
like the kind of
yeah.
conditions around you.
I think he means in commonplace society, the humans to which he encounters. But
Right.
I mean,
Like
that's like your local people.
yeah, the people in your
oh,
not new of your existence. But uh, I
but you know what I'm
actually,
saying? Like we just it's
yeah, no, go ahead.
go ahead.
Well, no, I actually I don't wear deodorant because of that. You know, I get I get
I just think that
topical.
shit's poison.
Yeah,
But yeah.
exactly. The aluminum in it and all that. I remember feeling
Well,
like
it's
weird
blocking.
stinging sensations in my underarms, and I was like, "There's definitely something to this." Like what was considered a conspiracy theory that oh, you guys
Right.
think they're trying to get you with the deodorant, and it's like actually turns out they were.
I don't think they're trying to get us. They're just trying to cut costs.
Yeah, sure. I mean, and I right. Whoever is promoting the dumbing down of human consciousness is just seeing that as as like an outcropping benefit of the way the system works inherently because of our ignorance.
Wait,
Right?
what's
Like,
in deodorant?
all sorts of crap. You know,
Aluminum.
consider it like fast food. You know, it's just filled with shit that you don't want in or on
Right.
your body. But so I use in place of that topicals, you know, cannabis infused topicals with tea tree oil and mint extract and of course full spectrum oil extract, cannabis oil extract, and it not only it does its job, but it also keeps me smelling fucking great. So goodbye to the deodorant. Thank you.
Right.
You
Yeah,
make
no,
your
I
own
just
here. That's fucking awesome.
yeah, you can definitely make your own. Like, well, like just like shampoo. Shampoo is just soap for your hair. Like they want to
Yeah.
sell you, like they want to be like, oh, it's fucking special. It's not fucking specialized. Like it's just they just tell you that because they put it in a different bottle and they can sell it to you for a different price. Like it's all of those things. But I just think it's very odd.
A year or so after their initial release, they end up diluting whatever original recipe that they had crafted it with, and then they don't really tell you, but you could
Right.
smell it and you could feel it, and it's different now. And
Yeah.
you said
They
it's just
use different
awesome.
products that are cheaper.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
But
what your brief injection real quick there about making it yourself, I want to stress the importance of that actually. Yeah, you don't have to go to dispensaries to buy topicals or go online to get it mailed to you or whatever. You can, if you can farm enough cannabis on your own, you know, it's just going a little bit further than the butter making
right.
process, and then you're just turning it into something that you put on your skin rather than eat, you know, and it's extreme.
We use shea butter.
Yeah.
But yeah, we make our own lotions from shea butter. It's like we all have sensitive skin. I have eczema. My wife has eczema. My kid has eczema. So like we just all put this lotion on. It's just we buy it raw. It's like comes in a brick and we have to whip it.
Yeah.
Cut it with a little bit of
Definitely
coconut
useful.
oil or whatever. But it has no perfumes in it, so it's good for our skin. Like,
Right. Yeah, definitely useful in that way. I highly encourage people to turn to these methods and turn away from buying products from the mainstream lines at Walmart, Marshalls, and Kohl's.
but I don't know. Anyway, my point was that like
Sorry.
basically biologically seems like we're becoming detached from our natural selves, right? Like more and more we're augmenting ourselves to become something that is different than what was naturally there. And it's like the societal pressure. And personally, I think that that's not good. I think that we should embrace naturalism and be like,
Yeah.
yeah, whatever. Like this is how humans are. Like it feels like we're just not okay with ourselves
Yes. That is exactly
on
how
a
it
large
is.
scale.
I think that's
Oh,
also
that's what
described
humans do.
biblically.
They breed and they bitch. That's all humans are for. They breed and they bitch. They bitch and they breed, and that's it. They bitch while they breed, and they breed about bitching and they bitch about breeding. That's what we're good for at this point.
Sound God,
Sounds very Dutch.
your porn is very odd. If they're just like complaining about political problems during, it's like, oh man, did you hear about the new Article 6A?
Like I swear to
Oh
God,
my-
somebody posted on the Discord. Somebody posted on the Discord. Kamala Harris, a unicorn.
Kamala
Was it
r
a
slash Kamala Harris hyena porn.
Somebody posted one that was
I haven't seen that post.
I did not see that either.
I want to say I don't want to call anybody out. I can't remember if it was no cap. I can't remember if it
It's
was either.
hilarious.
Oh my god! And it wasn't
We've
even
got
like
some
that they
crazy.
posted a video. It wasn't even like they posted a video. They just posted a screenshot of having come across it on their feed.
Right, right. It
Yeah.
was just like something portrayed to them.
They were like, "What the fuck?" Boom.
Yes. Yes. We have some very keen meme lords in our midst
Yeah.
on the Discord server. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's a championship every time.
I am
Yeah,
It's
right.
an
the
anarchy chief who can make his
master of
own.
memetics. I control the memetics. My mind controls the stream of memetics. Okay. My memetic potential is greater than God.
Greater than God.
Am I
Can you
saying?
make a
I don't
meme
have.
that God himself could not lift?
Didn't have enough creativity to say something more interesting, but
19 and 24, seen it all before.
yeah, definitely. I mean, I could go on and on about how memes actually relate to the kind of spiral confined development of artistic and kind of mental ideas. So that's throughout.
I think honestly, I think you could say that the Greek philosophers were tapping into some sensibility as to the mimetic drive, as it were. And I think concepts in their framework about the logos was accounting for that. But they didn't call it a meme. They didn't call it meme.
I thought they invented the word meme.
Memes are
Pretty sure.
genes.
I thought it was a Greek word.
Is it?
I mean, so.
I know Dawkins first employed the usage of the word to describe it in a genetic framework, but I know.
And then you got the word meme because of Dawkins. You had the word meme.
Well, the modern concept of it
is different, yeah.
took root from him, and well, I mean, as above, so below. I mean, it's different but the same, and I think this is kind of what I was getting at with like the early Greek philosophical thought, accounting for the presence of this mimetic drive. And that, I mean, it has something to do with logos. It has something to do with archetype. Archetypes are deeply involved in
And you see also
the evolution of the memes.
They're in a wheel. They're in a zodiac wheel. All planets and the sun. All these 12, usually 12.
You guys familiar with this? You're tearing me apart, Lisa. You guys familiar with that?
The wheel of
no.
12.
Sounds like a Backstreet Boys song.
"Yeah, tearing me apart."
Uh,
No, it's like a movie thing. And,
Sounds like a movie
uh,
quote.
yeah, you,
You
you
can
might
read
you might
Russian.
you
I'm
might
sorry.
capture people doing you might see like impressions of that across various TV and film. And most recently it was amplified by Tommy Wiseau with The Room, that the world's best shittiest movie. You guys know about that? Tommy Wiseau. Yeah, he did that. He did his own little "You're tearing me apart" bit in the film. And people think that he created that, right? And it became this meme. But it really first took place by Jimmy Dean in Rebel Without a Cause, right? He's in the interrogation
oh
room. The
god.
cops arrested him for drunken disorderly in public, and they call his parents in, and his parents come in. They're trying to talk to him. Why are you getting in trouble? Why are you doing all this? And he doesn't get why they don't get what his behaviors are. It's not confusion. It's a realization of the lack of animating principle in society that he doesn't have. That the oncoming generation is evolving into something different that its predecessors don't understand. And so, why are you tearing me apart? It's this like confusion expression, right? And it's become a meme now, and it's like, where does that come from? I mean, that's archetypal. I mean, actors tap into archetypal forces for genuine emotional expression if they're doing it right. And a lot of people would
Yeah, I think it's
argue that
called
Jimmy
sampling.
Dean did it right. Sampling, channeling. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, like in music,
A flow.
they can sample up to like 8 bars without having to get permission or some shit,
Oh, yeah.
I
That's
see.
like current memes, yeah.
Yeah.
which is dumb. It's still stealing. I don't care.
Yeah, no,
It's
you're
still thieving,
talking.
and you should shit.
Yeah,
All
you're
artist
describing
thievery.
what Tommy.
Comparison is the only thievery of joy.
I see. Yeah, right. Who said that one? Oh, who said that one?
Fucking
Somebody very
someone
profound.
crazy.
But yeah, you're essentially
Um,
describing.
Crazy is profound.
I want to say Roosevelt
Yeah.
comparison. Or
Oh
no,
yeah,
Edison. Edison.
That sounds like an Edison.
Yeah.
Very logical. Hey, a risk taker all the same, right?
and then I was like, no, that's the medicine.
Yeah, Edison was kind of a shitty person,
Yeah.
especially the
super
Tesla. Uh,
So you guys super excited?
oh, sorry, you cut out there.
So you guys super excited about the Saturn premiere? Super excited.
Oh yes, Saturn 2, long in the
Absolutely.
making.
I'm more excited than a jar of pickles.
More excited than a jar of fleas that cannot escape the jar because they've been trained behaviorally into accepting the jar as their perpetual fate. To just as a callback,
Pretty
real quick
sour
to some
notion.
previous content.
Pretty sour notion.
Oh, puns are interesting. But, all right, I'm gonna get going here.
Dude, my tone was too high. And
All right,
you never
Spooky.
heard my impression.
You guys
Oh,
have a
my
good
bad.
one.
You too, man. Thank you
Bye,
for
Spooky. I'm gonna go too, guys.
Love
participating.
you all.
I'm gonna
Bye.
charge my phone.
It's been a great podcast. This Gnostic
Can't wait to
Lore.
hear it.
Yeah,
All right,
Charge my
Nico.
phone.
Safe drive to St. Louis.
bye.